The Late Night Lake Show podcast is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best legal way to play daily fantasy player props in states like California, New York, Texas, and more. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. The best part is you can mix players from different sports. You could take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry. Prize Picks is the easiest way to play daily fantasy because it's just you versus the projected numbers. Just use our promo code LNLS and any deposit you make can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So go support the brand and go win you some money. It's the best of both worlds. Again, use our promo code LNLS.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to a new episode of the Late Night Lake Show podcast powered by Prize Picks. It is your host, Ricky, and on today's episode, we got our friend of the show, Jovan Buha, the Athletic, returning today to talk with me about the Lakers' recent 2023 NBA draft that just concluded this past Thursday. We got some new freshmen in the buildings. I got Jovan here to break down all of the Lakers draft picks and kind of turn our eyes towards the NBA offseason and the lovely free agency period that we all look forward to. So if you are not already, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you get your good content. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Leave us a rate and review. We would appreciate that. Jovan, first and foremost, man, I'm kind of like entering to the period when I hit you up. I'm not even sure if you are available. You work throughout the entire NBA season and the off season. And eventually I'm going to hit you up and your phone's on do not disturb mode because you're on some island getting your back rubbed by a nice lady. What does your schedule look like before we get into things? When do you actually get a break to live a life in this NBA season?
It's honestly not. It's like you're almost on like a public school teacher like schedule, like in a way where for me it's more August and September. Those are the 2 down months. I mean, still there could be stuff happening. Like remember what was the Kyrie trade from Cleveland to Boston? I want to say was like August of 2017. I could be wrong on that, but there's like sometimes there'll be these bigger trades that happen in August and September. The guys are already back in the facility, so you're starting to hear different things. But it is August and September, kind of like the downtimes, and then the other 10 months, it's like every day, holidays, weekends, nights, like constantly talking to people, constantly writing, obviously games during the season and whatnot. But it's fun, man. It's work, but it's this is the type of work it's hard to complain on it, right? Like it's fun. We're talking about basketball for a living, so it's a dream.
I hear you on that, man. I definitely hear you there. I mean, especially with Summer League becoming so popular now, right? I feel like that probably used to be a time where there was a small break or less attention went on it, but like you gotta break news for Summer League too. So no, I appreciate you always making the time for us and rocking with Late Night Lake Show as you do. But let's get into it, man. I mean, the Lakers did not have any huge surprises. I guess you take a look at some of their draft selection, especially at 17 with JHS. But a lot of folks talked about the Lakers potentially trading that number 17 pick. You had written a few articles about that possibility, even leaning into that it was more likely than not that the Lakers will not be making that selection. But you get to draft night, the Lakers pick comes up. Shams is muted, so I am not getting any draft picks broken early. And the Lakers end up making their selection. The guard out of Indiana, in which, if you're counting at home, is another Big Ten player that Rob Pelinka has brought onto the Lakers, going all the way back to Mo Wagner out of Michigan, and obviously our boy Max Christie last season. But let's start off here, Jay. Are you surprised that the Lakers did not end up flipping 17 for some immediate veteran help?
I was surprised, yeah. So I reported like 2 weeks before the draft that I was hearing they were likely to keep the pick. And that had been the buzz around that time. And then over kind of the week or so leading into the draft, it started to be more buzz of that they're probably going to trade this pick Doesn't mean they're not going to have a first round pick, whether it's trading back or trading up or as you mentioned, trading for some veteran help. But I was surprised that they didn't move it. I think, I know they had conversations with, multiple teams about, potential trades, but right now it's very much a buyer's market. And, so because of that, if you look at, like, really look at the West right now, tell me what team isn't trying to win next season. Like, maybe you can say Utah is the one exception, but
Right.
the other 14, like San Antonio is trying to be good because of Wemby now. Like, they're going to try and sign some people, including who I've reported, that they're one of the teams that's likely to offer or potentially offer Austin a contract this summer. But Houston, like, they owe all their picks to Brooklyn and other places. So like Houston's going to try and be good next year. So you look at the West, like you could make a case like 14 of the 15 teams are trying to at least make the play-in tournament next year. Like the West is going to be a bloodbath. So right now there aren't many teams looking to sell off the pieces. Like most of those teams are in the East. But even so, from what I was told, like the asking prices were so high, and you only have these short windows on draft night to execute deals. And of course, they're talking in the days leading up, and even in the hours and minutes leading up to their pick. But the other thing for the Lakers was, Jalen Hood-Schifino was not someone they thought was going to be there at number 17. I mean, if you looked at a lot of mock drafts, he was going before 17. So for them, they were looking at different guys. They really wanted Kobe. I mean, Kobe Buffkin was the other name I heard that they were really high on. That they were hoping he fell to them. He obviously went 15 to Atlanta, but a Derek Lively the second, the C drop, and Noah Clowney and Jordan Hawkins was someone who went higher than anticipated. So like just with the way that I think it was a combination of the way the draft shook out, where someone that they were high on that fell to them that they didn't anticipate being there. And then also just the asking prices of what it was going to cost to, potentially trade back, what it was going to cost to potentially acquire a veteran that could help them. I think kind of the subtext of some of this too is like, there just isn't a huge market for Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley right now. Like, I don't think teams are looking at those guys. If you're acquiring them, it's more about getting off salary or the Lakers pick, not really adding those guys to your rotation. So that was kind of the other thing too, where like, I think if those guys had a little bit more value, you could have potentially seen something get done. But I think when it kind of came down to it, they couldn't agree on the terms. And again, you have a 5-minute window once you see who 16's up. Now you got 5 minutes to figure this out of, are we taking Jalen or are we trading this pick? And they took some calls during that time, but they ultimately couldn't agree on anything.
Okay, so you believe that this was a case that the Lakers were not able to find a package versus that they just they valued the draft pick more than whatever offer they had. You don't think they had any?
I think it was a combination. I want to be like, I don't want to say that they don't value JHS. I think they do. Again, they had him higher than 7. Like, I know for a fact they had him higher than 17 on their board, and they didn't think he was going to be there. So I think it was a combination of like, this guy fell to us that we didn't think we could get. Now that he's here, like, this is a steal in our opinion. I know every team says that, but like, every team says it to an extent, but like they legitimately, at least to my knowledge, did not think he was going to be there. They had him pegged as like a late lottery guy. So they were like, this guy fell to us that we didn't think was going to be there. And then, yes, we got to do our due diligence because they are in win now mode to some extent with just LeBron AD, maybe 2-year window. We're looking at like 3 years, like max, but
right.
1 to 3 year window, probably 1 to 2 year window. So, they are looking at, we want to build the best roster possible, win a championship next year. So that's kind of the lens that they're operating under. So of course you're going to have calls. You're going to talk to people and see what's available. You just got to do your due diligence. So I think it was more of a combination of the right guy fell to them and they just couldn't agree on anything. And, I think there's other guys they would have been okay with had they been able to trade back and would have been happy landing. But again, just the asking price ultimately was too high for certain guys that they wanted.
You know, and the listeners know, the NBA draft and prospects that are falling, are steals, that's not really in my wheelhouse of expertise, right? But after the draft, and you go online, and obviously everyone's going to be angry about something at all times, right?
Of course.
But the Lakers making this selection was kind of met with a mixed bag. I think that, there was folks that were disappointed that the pick wasn't traded. There were folks that maybe weren't as familiar with Jalen's game out of Indiana, right? Big Ten player. A lot of Lakers fans, we're all over the world, but a lot of West Coast folks
Yeah.
aren't necessarily watching Big Ten basketball. And also there were names like Cam Whitmore that were, a lot sexier picks that would have been. Do you feel that the Lakers, they knew what to expect in drafting JSX? They talked about his maturity, already working with a former NBA head coach. Do you think the Lakers were moving in a position of being more conservative, or do you think that picks like Cam Whitmore were just a little too risky to make a leap on?
Yeah. So I reported they considered Cam Whitmore. That there was some discussion on taking him at number 17. I don't. There's been a lot of different things I've heard about the situation from the Lakers and elsewhere. So I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable speaking on it. But obviously he
Okay.
fell for a reason. I think it's. I think it's safe to say like medicals were a part of that. I'll just leave it at that. And so that was a fact, right? And I think that they kind of looked at it like, we could take this upside swing on this guy, and top 10 talent, but if we're, if we're not, if we miss on this, like it's a pretty big pick to miss on, and especially when they value Jalen in a similar range. So I think they looked at Jalen like, what one comparison I've heard, at least from a defensive perspective, is Marcus Smart. In terms now, of course, Marcus Smart is defensive player of the year. Like I think that's a high bar, so I don't want to say he's going to come in and be that. But in terms of like his physical measurements of being 6'5", 6'10" wingspan, solid 220, can defend 1 through 3, like. Honestly, in some ways, kind of similar to Talon, although Talon even had a longer wingspan, but like better defensively than Talon was, coming into the NBA. But like just that big, long, physical guard that can play either position. You heard Rob Pelinka mention it on draft night of like they kind of view him and Austin as a really good fit together, where both guys can handle the ball, both guys could defend multiple positions, play on and off the ball. So I think they were kind of viewing it more as we could potentially have the point guard of the future for us, and doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play a big role this year, but we'll see how the rotation plays out and what decisions they make in free agency. But they viewed him as someone just turned 20, is developing as a ball handler, really good in the pick and roll. And now I will say to play devil's advocate, I think the two knocks on him are athleticism, at least by NBA standards, and his outside shot. And it is hard. Like you usually got to have one of the two, right? Like
Right.
It's hard to not have both. So I think if there is I saw in just reading draft grades and kind of what the draft experts were saying, there were some people that didn't like the pick for the Lakers and thought they should have gone in a different direction. And, but at the same time, like I think the Lakers scouting department has earned the benefit of the doubt. And if you just look at their track record, led by Jesse Buss over the past decade, there's a lot more hits than misses. And really like they're batting like 90% of just like every pick has been at least a rotation player, if not a starter. And some of those guys, especially when they've had a lottery pick, like most of those guys have ended up being all-stars, being all NBA guys, being like the right pick, looking 5-10 years later. So I think they've done a really good job at assessing, what the team needs and who's, just kind of finding these character traits that make guys successful. And, JHS, I think is the latest in that lineage. So I think, if you're asking me, like I probably would have gone Cam and said, medicals be damned. Just take the guy with the upside, and like maybe you have an all-star, a future all-star. And I also think Cam at 6'6", 6'7", more of a wing, power wing, super athletic. I heard Sam Vecini on the Ryan Russillo podcast comparing his athleticism to Anthony Edwards and saying that like he measured out and just athletically as similar to anyone as Anthony Edwards. And like that sounds good to me.
That sounds nice to me.
I also think you look at like it could go multiple ways. We've seen it work out. We've seen it not work out. But like I look at MPJ in Denver and how he had bad medical. You know, I was covering the Clippers at the time, and they had the 12th and 13th pick, and you know they go with Shea and they go with Jerome Robinson and over MPJ, which I thought was a mistake at the time. And you know, but there were the medicals and this and that, and it clearly ended up being a huge mistake. And now MPJ's a starter on you know, a finals team and champion, and Jerome's out of the league. So I think it can go either way, but I think the Lakers scouting department deserves the benefit of the doubt. And again, for what they kind of wanted, they were looking at more of these guard types of, you know, they got so many free, like, you know, Dennis, Lonnie, D'Lo, Austin, Malik, potentially. Like they got a lot of potential, you know, change in the backcourt, and to secure a guy that they think could be a starting point guard at some point in the future, I think to them it was too appealing to pass up.
I found it interesting when the Lakers dropped the video of them taking JSS, and after Rob got off the phone, he turned to Jesse and he told him congratulations and gave him a handshake, right? You're reading the tea leaves. You look at that a few ways, right? Obviously, he's been the head of the Lakers scouting for a number of years now. And like you said, they may had more hits than misses. But I also wonder with that congratulations was a little bit of like, there were other options that were maybe discussed in the room. And, you know, we came in and made the final decision. Rob, he absolves those responsibilities over. So, you know, or was it a fact that because Rob didn't make a trade and that the Lakers were actually able to draft a player, was that the congratulations? So, you know, I do love those videos when they make the announcements and stuff, because you look around the room and you look at the players in the room, and it's like, you know, really understanding kind of all the different cogs into making a decision like this. There are a lot of conversations that need to be had, and that's even beyond just choosing what 19-20-year-old is going to be a millionaire coming up here soon. Jay, I was interested though, right? And I'm sure everybody has talked about kind of the balance of drafting these young players, kind of looking towards the future. You see Austin, you see how Hood-Schifino can pair up as the Lakers backcourt for many years to come, right? It's beautiful. We love looking in the future and having a bright outlook. But at the same time, this team's trying to win a championship today, right? And I think the Lakers are, while they had a very strong second half of the season, made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals with a brand new roster that, you know, depending on how much you bring back, should have some cohesiveness heading into next season. You got to wonder out loud, right? Like, how much do you expect, you know, not just Jalen, but I guess Max Lewis to contribute, if at all, and if that really is helping the bottom line of winning a championship this season? How do you think the Lakers kind of balance that decision-making and how they go about using these draft picks versus, we got to get LeBron and AD one more crack at this, baby?
Yeah, well, I think with Maxwell Lewis, you know, I think that's just an upside swing where, I mean, look, they paid a lot of money. They paid over $4.3 million for that draft pick. So that's for the people calling Genie and the Lakers cheap, like that. I think that's
$4 million is a lot.
$4 million is a lot for a second round pick.
You know,
yes. That goes against that. But so I think Maxwell, I think he's going to play a lot for South Bay, and I think he'll be the 15th guy on the roster or 14th, you know, depending on how many guys they ultimately carry. But I think that's more of a pick for down the road, and most second round picks, like, you know, you're not really expecting that guy to come in and play right away. So I think that one is more of just they see his talent, they see his upside. If he can develop defensively become more consistently engaged on that end of the floor, continue to develop as a shooter. He's got the physical tools. He's incredibly athletic, incredibly long. So he fits the mold of a 3-and-D wing type, archetype. And I think for them, they view him as someone that could become that in, 2-3 years down the road. So I think that one, I don't expect him to play. You never know. And again, like look at a guy like Austin who went undrafted and came in and killed it at the LeBron minicamp, killed it in training camp, and ultimately played his way into the rotation. So it's always possible. But at this point, Maxwell's viewed more as a project than as a ready now guy. Now, Jalen's more of a ready now guy. So I could see Jalen potentially being like a 9th or 10th guy. That's probably the optimistic. That's probably the optimistic outcome. But top 20 picks play you're kind of almost expected to play in a lot of situations, right? Like most of those guys in that top 20 are going to be playing rotation minutes for their team. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think a lot of it depends on, D'Lo, Dennis. Like the backcourt is pretty crowded. If you're assuming they're keeping Austin, they're keeping D'Lo, they're either signing a backup point guard or just re-signing Dennis. Now you have Max back there. Do you keep Malik? Do you re-sign Lonnie? Like you got 5-6 guards really quickly. And Jalen at this point projects probably more as a point guard than a shooting guard just because he isn't that level of a shooter yet. And he is used to playing more with the ball in his hands in the pick and roll. So theoretically, if he's running the second unit or co-running it, you're going to want the ball more in his hands than off of it. So I think, we got to see what he looks like in summer league. We got to see how he develops, how his shot develops. I think that's probably the biggest thing for him is just, can he knock that? Because he shot 37% on pull-up threes, but only 30% on catch and shoot threes. And I think you almost want the opposite for him, just because, that's going to be more of his role. I think playing next to an Austin, a D'Lo, a LeBron is, at some points you're going to have to be off the ball and spotting up. And you got to shoot better than 30% on catch and shoot shots. So, or catch and shoot threes rather. So I think I would say like right now he probably projects outside the rotation, but there is a path for him to, and I also think I look at his defense of like, if he can just come in and lock guys up. Like I thought Max Christie was really impressive on that end last season.
Oh yeah.
And the argument to play Max was probably more about his defense than anything. And if JHS can come in and do that and be a point of attack guy, be versatile, be good in Darvin's drop coverages, be switchable. Like I think that's the one path where, maybe he could earn 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes off the bench as kind of that spark plug defensive guy with some ball handling chops. So I think it's too early because we don't know what the rest of the roster looks like. I mean, right now the Lakers have 6 guys on the roster, five guys. But I think that there's a path to him being like a 9th or 10th guy. I just think it really depends on what they do with the rest of the backcourt and ultimately how his shot develops.
The Lakers obviously have a couple of guards that they're going to need to make decisions on, as you just said. I mean, D'Angelo Russell is an unrestricted free agent, and Dennis can walk away for free too. Did you see that Dennis is announcing his free agent decision on the 4th of July? Did you see that?
I did not see that. So you're breaking news to me.
He posted in his latest vlog, I think showing off the new LA house, that he's going to be making a decision on if he will be with the Lakers or another team. And I just found that
the
interesting.
Decision 2.0.
Yeah. So, shout out to Dennis for capitalizing on his time.
Got to get Jim Gray to interview him.
That's it. You know how it is. I'm sure Pat Bev is somewhere off to the side. Like, that should be me. That should have been me. Right. But, obviously, I think the Lakers are planning and building and looking towards the future with some of these draft selections. I guess I got to ask, I meant to talk about D'Angelo in our next section, but do you think these signings and picking up a guard in the draft as high as they did has any indication of what that might mean for D'Angelo? Because, he's looking for a bag that in a long-term deal. If the Lakers are saying that they're excited to seeing how Jalen and Austin look for the Lakers backcourt of the future, D'Angelo's got to be sitting there like, so how long is my future? Like 80 cents on D'Angelo, and if there's any connection between making this draft pick today and what that might mean for free agency with Russell.
I don't necessarily think so. The word I've been hearing and reporting is that it's sounding like D'Lo is going to be back. Now the one thing that has maybe changed in the last few weeks that I've heard is that it's sounding more like a short-term deal. And that's maybe where the JHS pick, like longer term, most rookie guys at least play 4 years for their team, and hopefully longer. But I think D'Lo is probably going to be a 2-year deal, and maybe 1+1, 2+1, 2, like some variation of that. But probably more likely a 2-year deal, and that aligns him on the LeBron AD timeline. Giving the Lakers flexibility to pivot in the summer of 2025, depending on what happens. And there's still the AD contract extension negotiations that are going to happen, later in the summer, and he's up for an extension in August. So we'll see. Maybe that timeline changes where AD's signed for longer. But as of now, the current timetable is a 2-year window again, with LeBron and AD. So I think they're really operating under. It's gonna take. I think, and Austin, of course, is an exception to. We'll sign Austin to a 4-year deal. I think Rui is another exception.
Yep.
But with maybe those two exceptions, everyone else they're looking at more of 2-year deal or 1-year deal, as we've seen them often kind of do the last few off seasons of a lot of shorter term deals, not signing guys for multiple years. So I think with D'Lo, it's looking like something 240, 245, 250, 255, like some in that range. And I think it's going to come down to just, negotiation and leverage. And I think one thing, like the money's the final, amount's going to matter more probably for the Lakers than anything, just because, they're probably going to be pushing up on that second apron in the luxury tax, depending on what they do. Like that, that was kind of the one thing was if they did end up flipping Mo and Malik, it wasn't necessarily an either or thing, but it was potentially going to be an either or thing with D'Lo, where it was like, if you keep that salary slot of Mo and Malik, that basically $27 million, and then you also re-sign D'Lo, now all of a sudden you're out over 170, and that's before factoring in potentially an exception, empty roster charges, like that's also assuming, of course, you re-sign Austin, re-sign Rui, but like if you basically run it back and bring everybody back, you're approaching 175, 180 million, and the second apron line is 179.5. So like you're really pushing, you're over the first apron almost certainly, and you're pushing that second apron, which then you lose your exception, and there's different restrictions on trades in terms of aggregating salary and whatnot. So Lakers have incentive to stay under that second apron, just because of all the restrictions that come with it. And it's just, the shrewd way to build your roster and manage your team is to try and stay under that. So I think they're kind of dealing with that of, the difference of D'Lo at 20 versus D'Lo at 25, like that $5 million could actually be a huge, difference in the way they're able to build their roster. So I think, there's going to be some negotiation there on ultimately what that number looks like, but it's sounding like they're going to keep D'Lo. Now I think if I'm them, I'm playing hardball, because I'm looking at the market of like, where's this suitor that's going to come out of thin air and offer him more than the non-taxpayer MLE? Like if you go down the list of every team with cap, like is Houston going to do it? No, they just drafted a point guard. Is San Antonio going to do it? I don't think he really fits Spurs culture.
You're not a pop guy to you. D'Lo's not a pop guy.
Is Orlando going to do it? They just drafted a point guard. They already have, Fultz, Cole Anthony, and then obviously just drafted Anthony Black. So like, go down the list of all these teams that have cap space, and like, where is this team that's giving D'Lo more than even 15 million? Let's just like, San Antonio could come in 230, right? Like, okay, who's giving him more than that, right? Like, so I just look at it. If you're the Lakers, like, I'd probably put like 236, 240, and just say, where's the bigger offer, right? Like, And if you find it, we'll reconsider. But if not, like, why should we pay you more than this? So I think that's probably the most interesting part of the Lakers offseason is just what happens at the point guard spot. I don't think, the Kyrie rumor is going to be there until it comes out he re-signed with Dallas or got traded or whatever. Like, that's going to be there. But I continue to hear Kyrie not happening. Fred VanVleet, like, they'd have to sign and trade. Right. It would just, you get hard capped in that scenario, and then that restricts how you build the rest of your roster. So I don't think that's likely. And then just looking at the point guard market, like, who else, do you re-sign Dennis and make him your starting point guard and say, we're just going to save some money. And, Dennis ended up being our starting point guard basically by the end of the playoffs. Like, can we sign him to non-taxpayer MLE or part of that? Look at a Gabe Vincent as someone who's almost kind of like that Pat Beverly type of, can play off the ball, solid shooter, good defender at either backcourt spot, a little undersized, but kind of plays that similar Pat Beverly role without the rah-rah stuff. Could he be a guy for also the non-taxpayer MLE? But I think if you really look at the options, there isn't much out there at the point guard spot. So I think the Lakers are going to keep D'Lo, retain that asset. Then, depending on how things go, maybe we start to hear stuff closer to the trade deadline. They're shopping him. They're looking to upgrade the point guard spot, and that's where you could throw in a pick or whatever to kind of sweeten the package. But I think right now it's trending more toward D'Lo on a 2-year deal and him staying there.
Okay, so the Lakers get to dance that line then of winning now or going for win now moves while also starting to build the post LeBron and possibly AD roster of the future. On paper and in theory, that sounds great, right? But we also just saw the reigning or the formerly ended dynasty that was the Golden State Warriors brag about that game plan and them being light years ahead of everyone else and how they're going to continue to build around Steph Curry, but also build the next generation of Warriors for after Steph Curry. And they got a ring, but now Jordan Poole is now in DC on the opposite side of the country. And, they bring in Chris Paul, and I just am cracking up watching all the videos that are resurfacing of Draymond saying how he doesn't F with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul talking about not shit being funny with why he fake laughed at Steve Kerr that day. And I'm just like, you know what? This looks like a toxic situation. I can't wait to watch. So I am, I guess, interested in that mindset of how that is going to play itself out. Obviously, it's a little bit different with how the Lakers are operating, but people will find similarities between the Russ move and the CP move. But the Lakers are continuing to draft and hopefully hold on to some of these picks. But let me ask you, Jovan, do you reserve a likelihood amount that neither of these draft picks that the Lakers selected will end up suiting up for the team and they'll be a part of a trade to bring LeBron and company more help today?
I think there's a chance. I would put that low though. Are we even talking like pre-summer league? Or like, I guess just preseason? Like, I don't know. I'd put it like 10-15%. Like, I think there's a chance. But I think, again, I think they're high on Jalen. And I think that's probably, again, maybe in the season they find the right move and they think it's the right win now move and they're willing to move him. But also with Maxwell, they're probably, I think they view him, higher than the average second round pick because they paid so much money to acquire him. Right. So I don't think they're going to just, basically give that away as like a throw in necessarily. I think they value him basically as a late first round pick. So I think like you with the NBA, you never want to say never. And I think the Lakers are clearly in win now mode. So they are weighing decisions that are win now decisions, and that would be potentially mortgaging the future for the present. But I don't think now is necessarily the time. Again, we'll see kind of what pops up in free agency. I think if the right guys interested in a sign and trade, I think they would consider that. But I don't think right now that move is out there. I think you kind of saw that with what, I mean, to me, Rob Pelinka kind of hinted at even some of the trade stuff where he was like,
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't, everything we're doing is about building a championship team. And sometimes you can't do that in one fell swoop, but we're going to continue weighing our options or something along those lines. And it was like, to me, that was his kind of cryptic way of acknowledging like, yeah, we did consider some trades on draft night. We did look at our options, and ultimately we didn't find the type of move that we felt would elevate our group enough to warrant giving up that pick. So I think, like, I do expect something to happen at some point, and it's looking like probably more the trade deadline where you see kind of another, I wouldn't say overhaul, but maybe another bigger move happen at the trade deadline to kind of give them that push for the second half of the season. But right now, I think that the tentative plan is largely just run it back, maybe make an upgrade with an exception, and then see how the team gels from last season. Do you build on that chemistry? Do you still have that continuity, the good vibes, all that stuff? And then if not, you start to reevaluate it and say, okay, well, we have picks XYZ that we can move. We have Jalen, who's rookie top 20 pick, that has value around the league. Like, so I think they're trying to take, I think, more of a patient, conservative might be the wrong word, but sort of conservative viewpoint right now. And looking at like, hey, we made the conference finals with this group. We want to run it back. But I think if they find the right move, I think they will do a bigger upgrade. I just think the bar for that is probably higher than the average fan thinks it is.
Fair. That is probably always the case, right?
Yeah.
But man, okay, but then that, we continue down the road of this NBA offseason, and free agency is right around the corner. But I look back now, and all I've been reading is how the Lakers were looking to package Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley and 17 possibly for more help. 17 has a name, right? He's Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? We know what he looks like. And once a draft pick has a name now, the value kind of changes because we know exactly what that person is, right? It's not a theory anymore. But does that mean the Lakers are kind of shifting away from thinking that they can flip Bees and Bamba together, since they couldn't flip Bees, Bamba, and 17 for something better? Or so do you expect those two back on the roster now?
So that from my understanding is still kind of up in the air with those two guys, and they're often lumped together, but they are obviously two different players. I think I think Mo's maybe the more interesting one, because if you look at the center market, there aren't many great alternatives. Like I was trying to make I'm working on a free agency list for the Lakers, and really, like, if you go through the center stuff, it's like, I'll pull it up right now, but we got like, so Naz Reid is a potential guy for either taxpayer or non-taxpayer MLE, depending on his market. Dwight Powell is another one who athletic finisher, decent rim protector, mobile, kind of switchable big a little bit, although he's lost some of his athleticism recently. And then it's like, I don't think I have another center on this list. And it really, like, you're looking at Biyombo and Jock Landale and just some of these guys where it's like, so I think
Brooke, but you think Brooke a little too expensive?
Brooke's too expensive. Brooke's too expensive.
Do some dirty things to get Brooke Lopez.
Brooke's gonna get like 15 to 20, I think.
God bless him, man.
Brooke's gonna get paid. Yeah. So yeah, I think so Mo's interesting to me because Mo at 10, I don't love. I don't think he showed to be a $10 million player, but Mo is like the backup 5. Like, I think there's something there. So there's a couple of things Lakers could do with both guys where they could technically waive them and re-sign them, a la what the Suns were going to do with Chris Paul. So like Mo's got 0 guaranteed. So they can waive that 10.3 and re-sign him and either sign him to a vet min contract, use biannual, use one of their exceptions or part of an exception on him. So that's one route they could go with Mo. With Malik, similar thing. I believe they have his bird rights, so they could also sign him. I want to say to something like 5-6 million off the top of my head, but because Malik at 16 is 16 and a half actually is pretty high, and especially with the way he had a diminished role in the playoffs. If you're re-signing Austin to a big number to make him the starting shooting guard permanently, potentially re-signing D'Lo, potentially re-signing Lonnie, Dennis, like you have Max, you have Jay, like, you can make a case Malik is like 6th or 7th on that depth chart. You want to pay that guy 16.5 million? Like that's a lot to just be sitting there. And also not really rehabbing his trade value, because I think his trade value took a slight hit with the way things kind of played out toward the end of the season. So it's not like teams are clamoring to add Malik at that number. So I think Malik could also be another guy that they potentially, decline the option and then try to re-sign him again, minimum, part of an exception, or just use his bird rights. So I think with both guys, they're viewing both options. Like right now, they're doing, this is kind of the days leading into free agency. It's all intel gathering, and it's about who's going to be available. What is the market for player X, player Y, player Z, player A, and who has interest in coming to the Lakers? Who could we get for the taxpayer MLE? Who could we get for the non-taxpayer MLE? How do we view that guy in comparison with Malik? How do we view that guy in comparison with Mo? And they're weighing all those things. So I would say, I could see, like, to me, if they end up keeping both, that's just really a sign that the market's dry and that they really aren't confident in the type of guys that they could get in free agency. But if they, for example, get rid of both, now they can use that non-taxpayer MLE, sign a guy up to about 12.5 starting out. And, that to me indicates they're probably trying to use that on someone good, or, maybe using that on a Dennis and a Lonnie, and maybe splitting some of that on both those guys. But I think you're going to kind of have a read on their free agency plans with what they do. Cause they could just keep those guys, roll it over and say, let's just, again, keep, run it back and basically have the same roster and maybe use the non-taxpayer depending on, the taxpayer depending on, all the names are so confusing. Depending on, how much money they sign each guy to. But so I guess my it's tough to say, because there was a point like a few weeks ago where it sounded like they both were gone for sure. Then more recently, it was like they're trying. Like, I think it was more the Lakers were trying to trade them at the draft if they could, and just get off that money, solve that problem, and obviously upgrade the rotation. It was probably a little wishful thinking in retrospect, as they weren't able to find a deal. But I guess I would probably say Malik might be the guy. I could see them more declining Malik's option just because it's such a high number at 16.5, and then trying to re-sign him to a smaller deal. But you also then, like, he's a free agent too, and he could go wherever he wants. And if Team X is offering him more playing time or more money, he can leave for that. So they're weighing all these things. There's a lot of things up in the air right now, but I would be surprised. Like, I don't think either guys are going to be there long term, like through the season. I think if anything, it's just like retain these guys and flip them later on as expiring contracts, or waive them, decline their option, and sign them to smaller, more palatable deals that save us some money.
That'd be very nice of both of them, because I mean, especially Malik, right? Like, I think he has a role that the Lakers desperately need filled in a knockdown, consistent volume 3-point shooter. The issue, he wasn't knocking down no 3-point shots consistently with the team. And to your point, that kind of lowered his value around the league. And maybe we need the front half of the season to pick that up. But at the same time, if he picks it up, you might as well keep him, right? So Malik, I think, at a discount would be ideal. But like you said, that kind of opens it up into the hypotheticals of, then he could just walk to another team that might, talk to him pretty as well. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. As folks know, Mo Bamba has not been on Ricky's, big boy honor roll list for a while, right? So I just find it funny that the Lakers are trying to package two struggling 3-point shooters together to try to upgrade some help. But Jay, as we wrap up here, man, we got to acknowledge the rest of the Lakers pickups that they had after the draft. They were not done. The Lakers went ahead and signed Florida center Colin Castleton to a two-way deal. They also picked up, I love this name, Demoy Hodge out of Mizzou. And then finally, they signed Alex Fudge to an Exhibit 10 deal. First of all, I keep thinking Exhibit 10's like a Division II level conference in college basketball. Can you just explain to me and the audience what an Exhibit 10 deal is?
It's basically like a training camp deal. So you could bring them in. I don't remember what I want to say. It's around, you could bring like 20 people in to training camp. So and I don't remember if there's a limit. I should probably brush up on this if there's a limit to how many Exhibit 10 guys. But like we've seen, I want to say I think Mac McClung was an Exhibit 10 guy at one point. Like we've seen them sign this kind of happens every year where the draft finishes, then it's the negotiations with the agents on who's going to get the two-way spots, who's going to get the Exhibit 10 spots, and there's so Exhibit 10 is basically a training camp invite of you'll play on Lakers Summer League team, and you're tentatively invited to training camp. They could end up rescinding that and signing someone else depending on how Summer League goes, but that's basically it. Yeah.
An invitation to come practice and play a few summer games, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, bet. Well, out of our two guys that were signed to two-way deals, Colin Castleton and Demoy Hodge, which one of the two names are you more intrigued by?
Castleton, I think and one thing I want to add quickly on the Exhibit 10 is they can convert that to a two-way if the player, it's kind of like a temporary holding thing as well.
I see.
So, if the player performs well, you can upgrade them to a two-way, but it's basically like a temporary minimum contract.
The waiting room to two-way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now Castleton to me is interesting. Sam Veceni had him ranked 45th, so that would be a mid second round pick. Apparently similar to Austin Reeves, he declined being drafted in the second round to sign with the Lakers. Has the same agency or agents as Austin Reeves. And also I think the Lakers kind of look at what happened with Jay Huff and kind of fumble in the bag there a little bit, right? Where Jay Huff is a two-way contract candidate or signed to a two-way contract and ends up playing really well for South Bay and gets called up a couple times and doesn't really play and get a chance to show what he can do, but then ends up signing a two-way contract with the Wizards and is balling out in Washington and looking like potential backup center. So I think for the Lakers, Castleton checks some of the similar boxes, a tall white rim protector,
right?
But more mobile defensively, and I think that someone that again kind of can fill a similar role in terms of just being it's kind of hard to have project bigs sometime. Like we'll see like the Wiseman or whatnot, but like you don't necessarily like a lot of the times Lakers and other teams, you're focusing more on guards and wings in the G League and whatnot. And, a lot of times, like if a big is good enough, he's probably going to be in the league. Right. Like, so it's kind of that delicate balance of like, if you're a G League big, you're probably a little worse than, you're undersized or whatever. So I think Castleton though is someone they're high on. So that's one that I think I think they've learned from the Jay Huff situation. And this is someone that, if he can show a certain level of defensive competence and just playing hard and being potentially a backup center, like that's something that they want to secure that asset and not let that go the same way they kind of did with Jay Huff.
And not to you said it first. You called him white first, but I just want to acknowledge that the Lakers have a history of developing diamond in the rough undrafted white basketball players and turning them into contributing members of the NBA society. You got our bald eagle, Alex Caruso, who's now running the Chicago Bulls for a check. And then obviously we got AR Austin Reeves, who's doing his thing. I just one last bonus question before I get you out of here, Jay. And this is kind of just about what you said with the Castleton situation of the choosing not to get drafted because you got something else worked out. Is that kosher? Can you is that one of those things where it's like you can't technically do that, but no one's really like actually going after that as a rule, or like what's the
Yeah,
vibe around doing
it's
that?
kind of a gray area. I mean, we've seen this throughout history, right? Like one of the most famous examples is Kobe scaring everybody off to go to Charlotte and get traded to the Lakers, but the New Jersey Nets wanted to draft him, and but the reason he dropped to 13 was that was a strategic move that him and his agent were scaring teams off of saying he wouldn't report or would demand a trade or whatnot. And then look, we've seen situations like Steve Francis gets drafted by Vancouver and he immediately demands a trade. And I think that's like the threat. And then that's the threat actualized. Right. So I think it's risky because you are kind of but like for Austin, and I think the fact that it was Austin's agents and they had just seen how it played out, like
right.
For the Lakers side and for their side, they can kind of look at that example as like, this just worked 2 years ago, so why not try it again? Especially with having a good relationship with the Lakers. I also think if you're the Lakers, like, we see it all the time where teams and agents kind of do favors for each other, and certain teams, certain teams have their agents that they like and whatnot. So if I'm the Lakers, I'm kind of also looking at it like, hey, we're trying to keep Austin this summer, and if we can do a favor and that's not to take away anything from Castleton, but just if we can do some good business with another client, from this agency, like, it kind of has two birds with one stone, and we're potentially getting a guy who could have been drafted in the second round and getting him where we're gonna kind of control the terms of engagement to some extent, but also we're currying some favor with his agents. And when Austin is deciding, what he wants to do in free agency, of course, some of it's out of his control because he's a restricted free agent. Like, that's just a factor. So I think it's legal, but teams don't have to honor it, right? Like a team could have just drafted. Like we've seen it happen before where certain guys try not to get drafted in the second round or whatever. Team takes them, and it just is what it is. So I think it's one of those like gray area things though, where there's no like technically you shouldn't be like telling teams not to draft you or like trying to influence it, but it's part of the process, and we'll see if it works out for the Lakers.
Hell, we thought we were kind of seeing that in Brandon Miller's kind of interesting responses to his pre-draft questions, and just straight up talking trash about MJ, saying he missed his free throws and all different types of stuff, and calling Paul George his GOAT and all off the wall stuff. And then fast forward to draft night, and
I think maybe he was trying to get drafted by the Hornets, man, with the trash talking MJ.
Okay, that's true, right? That's the best way to go out to competitors, go right back at them. So, well, that should be interesting. Obviously, folks are going to have their eyes on Portland and seeing how that Scoot Henderson, Dame Lillard situation is going to work itself out, or not. And maybe that's our next NBA big shoe to drop. But free agency is on Friday. We are here, baby. Like, it is about to be another fun season. Everybody knows the NBA off season is about 70% of the entertainment that the actual game of the NBA is, just from all the drama and movement that's going to take place. But Jovan, as always, man, we know you're going to be on the trek, on the case, and trying to figure out what the Lakers moves are, and obviously reporting it back out to us through the Athletic. So we appreciate you, as always, joining us today, my man. And everybody knows where to find you at this point in time, so I'm just going to say thank you again for hopping on with us.
Of course, anytime, man.
Yes, sir. All right, that's going to do it on this episode of the Late Night Lake Show podcast. Again, make sure you are subscribed to the channel wherever you get your hashtag good content. We are making some changes coming up. You should see some fresh faces coming in, doing more content for the brand. Make sure you're checking out our website for the latest articles and recaps and videos like this, our interview with Jovan. And yeah, we appreciate y'all's support. About to be a crazy.
I'm gonna interrupt you.
Yeah.
As we were talking about Naz Reid earlier, 3-year, $42 million extension with the Timberwolves. So cross Naz Reid off.
Oh, that hurt. Nazir. Oh, all right. Well,
so that's $14 million a year.
What you think? Was that high, low, or about right? The Lakers couldn't have offered.
I mean,
that, right?
it's hilarious to me just because they got two starting centers that they're like jamming into lineups together, and now they got 3 centers they're paying 14 or more million.
Yeah, you go, Minnesota.
So you feel like I think it's fair. It's probably a little high for me, but I think he's good. I mean, obviously, like stretch big. I like not like I think he'd start for some teams. I think 14 is a lot for a backup center when you have 2 starting centers, but maybe they're just retaining the asset and going to flip him down the road, or they probably got to break up Cat and Gobert at some point.
That's what I'm saying, man. What's that mean for Big Purr? What that mean for Big Kitty Cat?
Change the game.
Yeah. He about to be changing addresses if I start reading the tea leaves. So he might be up in the greater Northwest catching rebounds for Dame. But, oh, man, I mean, Naz Reid was kind of my pie in the sky. And, obviously even more unrealistic was Brooke Lopez as far as big boy U representatives that can do their thing in the Lakers. But we will turn the page on that. Appreciate the breaking news, Jovan. And there's nothing else blowing up your phone, right? I can end the show?
No.
All right, we up out of here.
All right, yeah.
All right, y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Peace. Man, that hurts, Jay. That hurts. I guess you could do extensions at any time you want, right? Like it just, there's no calendar season for extending players, right?
Yeah, and